Is Christianity a delusion or a divine revelation? In this thought-provoking debate, Dr. William Lane Craig presents compelling arguments for the existence of God and the resurrection of Jesus. Watch as he confronts skepticism and challenges his opponents to consider the evidence.
One Christian apologist who seems to put the fear of God into many of my fellow atheists.
As Anthony Kinney of Oxford University, he writes, a proponent of the Big Bang Theory, at least if he is an atheist, must believe that the universe came from nothing and by nothing. But surely that doesn't make sense. Out of nothing, nothing comes. So why does the universe exist instead of just nothing? Where did it come from? There must have been a cause which brought the universe into being. I thought that the first premise, that whatever begins to exist has a cause, was virtually indisputable. Suppose that something could come into existence from nothing. If that were the case, then it's inexplicable why just anything and everything doesn't pop into being out of nothing. But no one here tonight is worried that while you're listening to this debate, a horse may have popped into being uncaused out of nothing in your living room and is there defiling the carpet right now as we speak. Well, it's worse than magic. Yeah. When you think about it, it really is. In magic, when the magician pulls a rabbit out of the hat, at least you've got the magician, right? But on atheism, the universe just popped into being uncaused out of absolutely nothing. So if you do not believe in magic, you should resist any kind of attempt to deny the argument by rejecting the first premise, because then you're believing something worse than magic.
It doesn't imply a God.
It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows.
Yeah, but, but the cause hasn't got to be God.
Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal. Now, as the cause of space and time, this being must be an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial being of unfathomable power. Moreover, it must be personal as well. Why? Because the cause must be beyond space and time. Therefore, it cannot be physical or material. Now, there are only two kinds of things that fit that description. Either an abstract object, like numbers, or else a personal mind. But abstract objects can't cause anything. Therefore, it follows that the cause of the universe is a transcendent, intelligent mind. Secondly, how else could a timeless cause give rise to a temporal effect like the universe? If the cause were an impersonal set of necessary and sufficient conditions, then the cause could never exist without its effect. If the cause were permanently present, then the effect would be permanently present as well. The only way for the cause to be timeless and the effect to begin in time is for the cause to be a personal agent who freely chooses to create an event in time without any antecedent determining conditions.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't, computers are designed by people.
No, this is a self-designing computer.
Timeless.
Timeless.
Well, that's a contradiction in terms.
Why is it timeless? What's contradictory about it?
A computer has to function, it takes time.
No, this is a special computer.
Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent.
Oh, it's logically coherent?
Yes, you have to be logically coherent.
Oh, no, this computer
besides,
is amazing.
No, besides, it would have to be, as I said, a personal being.
No.
A computer is a physical
Not this computer.
Object.
Oh,
well, then,
no.
Okay, see, what you're doing is what you're calling a computer is really God. A non-physical, It's just another word if you rob it of all the attributes that make it a computer. If it is the case that you can't prove that God does not exist, then you shouldn't be a naturalist. You should be some sort of agnostic or something, but you shouldn't go around saying things like, nature is all there is. There is nothing beyond matter and energy. There is no supernatural reality, because those claims exceed what you yourself say you can prove. Mr. Hitchens' last speech, he would agree with that first statement, that there is no good argument that atheism is true. He says, I simply don't have any positive reason to believe in God, but he doesn't really give an argument against God's existence. Indeed, he seems to suggest that's impossible. But notice that doesn't prove atheism. That just leaves you with agnosticism, namely, you don't know if there's a God or not. So at best, you're left merely with agnosticism.
To see how my reasoning process works, let me try an analogy. Suppose you have a large sum of money you wish to invest, and I'm a broker, and I'm telling you the stock market's going up and up and up and up and up. And you say to me, well, now look, I'm pretty happy with my bank checking account. My money's really safe. Give me several positive good reasons for investing it in the stock market. And I proceed to give you one after another really weak, in your judgment, argument. And after you get past the third or fourth one, you stop me and you say, no, I'm not going to additionally try to put my money in the stock market. I don't want my money there. You haven't given me enough good reasons.
Okay, now,
the naturalist is somebody who retains
this
belief in
exactly
nature.
Illustrates my point. That person has not given you reasons to believe the stock market is going up. But that doesn't allow you anyway logically to conclude that therefore the stock market isn't going to go up or that it's going to go down. You simply have to withhold judgment. You see, it seems to me your reasoning here is logically invalid. On the atheistic view, certain actions such as rape and incest may not be biologically and socially advantageous, and so in the course of human development have become taboo, that is, socially unacceptable behavior. But that does absolutely nothing to prove that such acts are really wrong. Such behavior goes on all the time in the animal kingdom. On the atheistic view, the rapist who chooses to flout the herd morality is doing nothing more serious than acting unfashionably, the moral equivalent, if you will, of Lady Gaga. Repeat the first part of the question again, because I disagreed with what you said there.
It is impossible to prove the
impossible to prove something does not exist. That's silly. Of course you can prove something does not exist. We can prove, for example, that there are no living Tyrannosaurus Rex on the face of the earth. We can prove that there are no Muslims of the United States Senate. Or, as Dr. Shook says, if you can show that something is a self-contradiction, he's in the House. Yeah. You can show that something is self-contradictory. So there are no married bachelors. So this is an atheist line that you hear on a popular level all the time, but that sophisticated atheists don't take, because it is easy to prove that things don't exist. It's been pointed out by Frank Tipler and John Barrow in their book, The Anthropic Cosmological Principle. They list 10 steps in the course of human evolution, each of which is so improbable that before it would have occurred by chance alone, the sun would have ceased to be a main sequence star and incinerated the Earth. And they calculate the probability of the evolution of the human genome between 4 to the negative 180th power to the 110,000th power, and 4 to the negative 360th power to the 110,000th power. So if evolution did occur, it would literally be a miracle, and therefore evidence for the existence of God.
If he had succeeded in demolishing your arguments, would your faith have remained intact?
Yes. Both because my faith is not ultimately based on arguments, but also because I've got other arguments. Auger characterized my debate with the British atheist Lewis Wolpert at Central Hall, Westminster, London, in the following way. Wolpert: there's no evidence that God exists. Craig: there is evidence that God exists, and here it is. Wolpert: there's no evidence that God exists. Craig: There is evidence that God exists, and here it is. Wolpert, there's no evidence that God exists. Well, I'm afraid that that characterization isn't very far from the truth. However unfashionable it may appear, I am actually convinced that there really are good reasons to believe that God exists. And let me just sketch tonight, briefly, some of those reasons. Number one, God is the best explanation of the origin of the universe. Number two, God is the best explanation of the fine-tuning of the universe for intelligent life. Three, God is the best explanation of objective moral values in the world. Number four, the historical facts concerning the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus imply God's existence. Finally, number five, God can be immediately known and experienced. There's no evidence that God exists.
There is zero evidence for the existence of God.
On the other hand, I think we've got five good reasons, all of which point to the existence of a transcendent creator and designer of the universe, who is the locus of absolute value, who has revealed himself in Jesus of Nazareth, and who can be personally known and experienced.
My argument against God's existence doesn't depend upon genes. It's the absence of evidence. And
there's no evidence that God exists. In fact, I would venture to say that Christianity as a worldview stands intellectually head and shoulders above any other ism or philosophy of life that you might care to enunciate. And for that reason, I find myself enthusiastically a Christian theist.
there's not the slightest indication of evidence of the kind that we would use in science in our day-to-day lives for the existence of this supernatural being again.
There's no evidence that God exists.
By the way, I hear that the word is out on campus that between the two of us, Austin Dacey is hotter. Now that may be the case, but all I can say is this: I'll bet you my wife is hotter. I want to invite Mr. Hitchens to think about becoming a Christian tonight. Honestly, if he is a man of goodwill who will follow the evidence where it leads, all of the evidence tonight has been on one side of the scale. And he wants to affirm objective moral values, so why not adopt theism?
Professor Atkins, would you like to comment on what you think about philosophy trying to use science to do philosophy? Is that a mistake to try and answer questions in that method that sort of
philosophy is a complete
outlining?
waste of time.
And what Professor Atkins says in his book on being is that, in fact, the universe never really began to exist because nothing exists. He says the positive and negative energy in the universe balance each other out, and thus on balance there is zero energy, and therefore really nothing exists. Not you, not me, not Professor Atkins.
There is nothing here, I will concede that, but it's an extremely interesting form of nothing. There was nothing originally. There is nothing here now, but it's through whatever event took place at the inception of the universe, it became an interesting form of nothing.
If Professor Atkins is right, then nobody has really offered this objection, right? Because nobody exists. So why should I bother refuting it if the objection doesn't even exist and nobody has ever raised it? So I think the conclusion is clearly absurd. Tex, you're a dirty, cheating skunk. Every time you deal, you get 4 aces.
Egad, Jones, look how the processes of metamorphosis and sedimentation have formed these uncanny objects.
If there's anybody watching or listening to the debate tonight who hasn't found God in a personal, experiential way, then I want to invite you as well to think about becoming a Christian. I became a Christian as a junior in high school, and it changed my entire life.
And I believe that if you'll look into it honestly with an open mind and an open heart, that it can change your life as well.
The debate between Dr. William Lane Craig and his opponents presents a fascinating exploration of the evidence for Christianity. While Craig offers compelling arguments for the existence of God and the resurrection of Jesus, the debate ultimately highlights the subjective nature of belief and the challenges of proving historical events beyond a reasonable doubt. Ultimately, the decision of whether to believe in Christianity is a personal one that requires careful consideration of the available evidence, philosophical arguments, and one's own worldview.